Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY sailboat refit video here about good old Athena. For the past 3 or 4 weeks I've been trying very hard to finish painting the hull. I was successful in applying the first 2 coats of Perfection Pro and the result looked pretty dang spiffy if I do say so myself. But since then, the weather has been a right pain in my behind, and it's only gonna get worse from now on, but I think I've got a solution. If you're new to my channel, for the past 4 years I've been hard at work refitting Athena, including rebuilding the entire deck, building a new rudder, gutting and subsequently rebuilding the interior, and tons of other projects. All of that is documented right here on YouTube, and I publish a new video every Sunday. Next month, which is October 2020, Athena's gonna go back in the water, and these tasks are what I need to complete before I can do that. The plan for the winter is then for me to finish the interior of the boat. The next summer, my fiance Ava and I are gonna move aboard and start cruising full time. Let's get back to that 3rd coat of paint, because that coat of paint is very important, not from a cosmetic standpoint. It's gonna look exactly like the 2nd coat of paint, but for UV resistance it is very important. So for a long-lasting paint job, I want to get that 3rd coat of paint applied. The alternative to applying the 3rd coat of paint now is to haul the boat next summer, pull the mast off of the boat and get her indoors somewhere. All of that is going to be expensive, time-consuming, and just a general headache. And Ava and I are going to have a lot of stuff on our mind next summer with us moving aboard and getting ready to untie the lines. So to be able to apply the 3rd and final coat of paint, I am willing to put in a little bit of extra effort right now. I was hoping I'd get lucky with the weather and I could just paint Athena as she stands right now, but that is not gonna happen. And I was really hoping it wouldn't have to come to this, but yeah, let's get to some construction tomfoolery. Yep, Athena is about to become an indoor boat, but only for a very short time. The time-lapse might have made it seem like this was super quick to build. It was not. It took 3 days, and I still have to put on the tarps. I think Martin is going to help me do that tomorrow. But the good news is, once that is done, all that's needed to paint the hull is just a light sanding with 400 grit, and then I can check that 3rd coat of paint off the to-do list. Like I mentioned, Athena is going back in the water in October, so she's only gonna be in the ginormous tent for a few weeks. And spending all of that time and energy to build this ginormous structure does seem rather silly. But remember, the alternative was to haul her next summer to just apply that single coat of paint, which also seems rather silly. So yeah, I'd rather get it out of the way now and just be able to check it off the to-do list. The reason I haven't been able to paint the hull for the last 3 or 4 weeks is because the temperature has dropped quite a lot, and we've also gotten a ridiculous amount of condensation. And with those conditions, no matter how sunny it looks in the weather forecast, there's just no way I'd be able to paint the hull without getting it indoors or under a ginormous tent. I'll give the hull 4 or 5 hours to dry, and then we can get to sanding with 400 grit to prep for paint. In response to my last couple of videos, I've gotten a lot of comments asking why on earth I'd want to put Athena back in the water now. Why not keep her here right next to the workshop over winter? There are a bunch of reasons. Number 1, the guy that owns the cradle wants to put his boat in there, so I need to move Athena. 2, it's gonna be a lot easier to lift heavy stuff aboard the boat using the mast crane in the marina. Stuff like the generator, the washer, the dryer, heavy stuff. 3, I would much rather step the mast now than in the spring, because again, Ava and I are going to have a lot of other stuff on our minds in the spring, and to be able to step the mast, well, the boat needs to be back in the water. 4, I want to see how Athena sits in the water before I decide where exactly to place the isolation transformer, the inverter chargers, the batteries, and the forward tanks. 5, I am pretty much done with the stuff that requires me to use the machines here at the workshop. The rest of the interior I can finish with just the tools I've got here aboard Athena. 6, Athena is going to be right next to Obelix, the boat I'm living aboard, so that'll mean more time for working on Athena. Plus, I'll be able to bring Jökull, my dog, aboard Athena with me. 7, as soon as Athena is ready for me to move aboard, I want to do that so that I can sell Obelix, the boat I'm living aboard. And again, I want to do that so that Ava and I don't have to worry about that next summer. Last but certainly not least, number 8. Cost. A lot of people were arguing that it would be cheaper for me to keep Athena here at the workshop compared to in the marina. That's not really that much of a consideration because remember, slip fees here in Denmark are pretty dang cheap. For 5 or 6 months during the winter, I can keep Athena right next to Obelix for 200 bucks in total. Not per month, in total. Surprise, surprise, sanding the hull took a lot longer than expected, but at least, hopefully I won't have to sand the hull again for many years. Except for a light washing with some soapy water, the hull should now be prepped for that third and final coat of paint. I'm gonna hold off on washing the hull until I've gotten the tarps in place. I've got a sneaky suspicion getting those giant tarps in place is gonna be quite the headache, but we'll find out tomorrow. So far, so good. All that's left to do now are the sides. Before I put those on, I want to wash the hull so that it's fully prepped for tomorrow. I may have made life a little bit harder for myself by not having an opening that the scaffolding will fit through. To clean the hull, I'm just going to use a little bit of soapy water and some elbow grease. It shouldn't take more than an hour or so to wipe down the hull, and that should leave plenty of time for the water to evaporate before the sun sets. After having washed the hull, I rinsed it thoroughly with fresh water just to make sure I got rid of all the soap. Then I put the sides on the tent and voila! A giant tent. It's definitely not the best looking tent in the world, but it doesn't have to look nice, it just has to enable me to apply that third and final coat of paint. Using my little handy dandy wireless temperature and humidity logger, I know exactly how warm and humid it is here right now. And by here, I mean right here underneath the fiberglass Dodger. The temperature logger is this little doohickey. Looking at the app, we can see the temperature is 26.4 degrees Celsius and the humidity is 66%. The challenge I've been facing with Perfection Pro and the reason for building the tent is because it takes a relatively long time to cure before it's cured enough that it can get wet from rain or dew. So I want to paint as early as I possibly can tomorrow, and that means the boat must be nice and dry in the morning, and to achieve that, it's time to bust out the secret weapon. This delightfully green looking doohickey is a 25 kilowatt or 85,000 BTU diesel heater. Dinosaur squeezings gets turned into glorious heat that gets piped directly into the tent. The heat comes out right here, and up here is the control doohickey for the diesel heater. I am pretty sure this tent is going to be like the Sahara Desert in the morning. Before I start painting, I'm going to use the little temperature and humidity logger to check the, well, temperature and humidity, just to make absolutely sure that I'm within the parameters in the TDS. I really don't want to mess up this final coat of paint. And I'm sure I've just jinxed myself by saying final coat of paint like a bazillion times, but fingers crossed. Tomorrow when I'm done painting, I'm not gonna come inside of the tent again. I'm gonna stay out until, well, maybe Monday morning, just to make absolutely sure I don't mess anything up. Often in the end of my videos, I'll give a little update on the remaining tasks just to keep you guys in the loop, but seeing as I'm not gonna come inside of the boat tomorrow, why don't we do that now? I've accepted a quote for new standing rigging for Athena, and I'm gonna drop off the old rigging on October 2nd. We'll get back to the details in an upcoming video. Service the mast and rewire the mast. I've got almost everything I need. The new VHF antenna and the coax cable showed up a few days ago. The tricolor anchor light for the top of the mast also showed up. I've also gotten the cable I'm gonna put inside of the mast for all of this LED lighting. As you can see, it's not super heavy gauge, but it should be okay for LEDs. I'm waiting for a few more lights and a wind instrument for the top of the mast before I can start this task. The bulwark/tow rail is progressing nicely, and I've also received some doohickeys for the D240. There's a new raw water strainer here. I've got a bunch of different hoses here. There's some coolant hose, some vent hose for the diesel tank, and also a fill hose for the diesel tank. These are hopefully the last Volvo spare parts I will need for my little D240, which is the main engine here aboard Athena. This is the molded hose for the expansion tank I mentioned in last week's video. I should be able to mount the new cleats next week once the paint has cured. I've got all the cleats. All I need is just 2 more backing plates. This is one of the cleats. I've got the rest in this cardboard box. I've already got all of the nuts, the bolts, and like I mentioned, 4 of the backing plates. These are 6mm stainless steel, most definitely overkill. The new prop is just a matter of me ordering it. I just haven't done it yet. It should get here within a couple of days once I order it. And last, but certainly not least, the activation of the copper coat. This is all ready to go. All that's keeping me from doing it is just, well, I'm kind of dreading it. So even though you guys have only seen me build the tent this week and hopefully apply a coat of paint tomorrow, the other tasks are still progressing nicely. It's just building the tent has been very time consuming, so there hasn't really been a lot of time for other stuff this week. It's Sunday morning, and I cannot put into words how annoyed and pissed off I am right now. Last night, Martin checked on the diesel heater, and it was no worky. Upon closer inspection, it turns out it's pooped out a bunch of black stuff. With the heater broken, that means no heat for the tent. That means the temperature is way too low and the humidity is way too high. I don't think I have to point out how soul-crushing and freaking infuriating that is, considering the fact that I've just spent a week building this tent. There is a slim chance that the burner I've got here at the workshop might fit in here, but I am definitely not sure. It's about 3 hours later now, and as you might be able to hear by the rattling sound in the background, the diesel heater is working again. I've got the culprit right here. So the good news is that the diesel heater is working again. The bad news is that we're still outside of the spec in the TDS. I will apply masking tape to the hull, and then I will take a final look at the temperature and humidity and decide whether or not to paint. Temperature-wise and humidity-wise, it looks like we're fine, but it is a lot later in the day than I wanted to get started, and also condensation has started forming on the tarp. I am not happy about this, and to be honest, I am in no mood for shooting video. Also, once I start painting, I can't reposition the camera. So yeah, if you want to see me apply Perfection Pro, I'll link in the video where I applied the first 2 coats. But yeah, I'll get this on the hull, and then we'll just have to cross our fingers. It's done. I have applied the 3rd coat. It looks pretty good. I've got a few bugs in there, but I mean, that just comes with the territory when you're painting a boat outdoors. And for whatever reason, they seem to be very attracted to shiny paint, the bastards. But well, I can't do anything about that. I think Perfection Pro is an awesome product. It's pretty easy to apply, and the result looks just like a sprayed surface. But there are some downsides. The requirements for temperature, humidity, and absolutely no wind can make it a little bit difficult to work with outdoors. Or at least that was the case for me here in Denmark. If you're located somewhere where the weather is more conducive to painting outdoors, you're probably going to have a much easier time finding a suitable weather window. This is not the last time I've used Perfection Pro, but it is most definitely the last time I do any kind of somewhat extensive work to the exterior of a boat outdoors here in Denmark. The weather was a challenge when sanding the hull, when fairing the hull, and when painting the hull. The weather has just in general been a giant pain in my behind all summer. Of course, the overwhelming positive news is that I have finished applying the third coat of paint. Now it's just a matter of crossing our fingers and hoping that the fact that I got started a little bit later in the day doesn't end up wrecking the paint job. I won't know until tomorrow morning whether or not the paint job is going to turn out okay. And I don't want to leave you guys hanging until next Sunday. So tomorrow before work, I'm going to swing by and I'll post the result on Facebook, Instagram, and here in the community tab on YouTube. If the humidity gets way too high or the paint gets wet for whatever reason, then the paint job is going to turn out super matte. And if that happens, then I'll have to sand everything and apply another coat. But yeah, let's cross our fingers that doesn't happen. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get a bunch of comments saying that I should have built the tent in the beginning of the summer, but I don't really agree with that because the workshop is located on the top of a hill and we do get pretty high winds here very regularly, and building something that would be able to withstand those winds is gonna be more of an engineering challenge than the little hut I've built here. And if I'd just gotten a little bit lucky with the weather, I could have applied the third coat of paint without building the tent. So yeah, but at least hopefully the third coat of paint is done. With fingers crossed and hoping that the paint job is going to turn out okay, I'm going to end this video here. In terms of next week, well, if the paint job turns out okay, we should be able to get the cleats mounted and also put in the through hull for the exhaust for the engine and continue hooking that up. So, well, maybe not next week, but the week after that, I should be able to get the engine fired up. That'll be very cool. But as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!